Thank you, Zach, again for making the time for coming to the podcast to talk about all the things that matter. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. How would you like to be presented? Usually what I do is I pre-record the intro for my guests, but I usually also ask the guests, like, how would you like to be presented or introduced? What do you feel is important for listeners to know at the beginning of our conversation?
I would like to be introduced as a researcher. So I research what makes life and work meaningful for people. But then I am also out with people, actually helping them to use the skills to ensure the people around them are able to experience meaningfulness.
Good. Amazing.
Cool.
So you wrote this book, The Power of Mattering, how leaders can create a culture of significance. I want to ask you, why now? Why do you believe now is it is important to write about this, mattering and significance? And then also you can explain to our listeners what you mean by the words mattering and significance.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple of things going on in the world right now that are getting a lot of attention. One is loneliness.
Mhm.
So one out of every three people in the world, according to the American Psychiatric Association, experience persistent feelings of loneliness and disconnection. You also see rising levels of disengagement in work. So feeling
Mhm.
emotionally uninvested in work. About 7 out of 10 people listening right now feel emotionally uninvested in their work, the place where they spend a third of their lives.
Yeah.
In schools, almost half of students feel that they're not valued. In fact, there was one study of 66,000 students that found that over half said they didn't think anybody would notice if they were absent. So what's going on is loneliness, disengagement, feeling unvalued are getting a lot of attention. But what our solution has been to those things has been
Mhm.
to connect more. So develop more connections, reach out to people. And we have more engagement initiatives than ever in organizations. It's a $1 billion industry now. We have more initiatives to bring inclusion and belonging into schools, and yet we're still lonely, disengaged, and feel undervalued. Why is that? When you look at the data, we're facing a mattering deficit. So people do not feel seen, heard, and valued in their everyday interactions. 30% of people also report feeling invisible. In that same Gallup engagement survey that found that we're at our lowest level of employee engagement in a decade, just 39% of people said that they had someone at work that cared about them as a person. Just 30% said that someone invested in their unique potential. So this is not like a loneliness epidemic. It's not a disengagement crisis. It's not even a technology addiction problem. It's a mattering deficit. And mattering is the feeling of being significant to the people
Mhm.
around you. That comes from feeling valued and knowing how we add value. And mattering, we develop mattering through interpersonal interactions, not through
Yeah.
programs, perks, pay, awards. And I think the way to solve those problems is through re-optimizing how we are with one another so that the next person we interact with feels seen, heard, valued, and needed.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on. And underneath that is that we're actually facing a mattering deficit that's driving some of these things that we're seeing.
Can I ask a question? Why do you think we experiencing it now? Or was it always this way? We just never noticed? Or maybe something contributed for us to not feel that anymore? Like
I
before,
think
maybe
there's
we felt more or not?
I think there's one big reason, and that is that since the year 2000, we've been able to send short text messages to one another.
Mm-hmm.
So there are more platforms than ever. Whether you're managing your kid's sports team or communicating with your classroom or an organization, there are platforms for everything. And what has happened is that we have been able to actually evade the situations that help us to hone the human skills of seeing,
Mm.
hearing, and valuing one another. For example, if you give me some bad news, I can just send you a little like sad faced emoji and say, type, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't actually have to sit with you anymore. Seek to understand you, show compassion. If you give me some good news, I can just say, hey, good job. I don't have to share with you why I'm proud of you, what I've seen in you, illuminate your gifts. So the more we've been able to not be in situations that allow us to use those skills, the more those skills have suffered. And here we are, right? When we need them more than ever. We've also, since the 1970s, called these skills soft. And anytime you label something soft or simple, your brain thinks you're better at it than you are. It's called an overconfidence bias. So we approach it with less rigor. It's likely why less than 2% of the world's population gets formal education on things like listening well. So that's why the solution is to reconnect, is not to put down your phone, not to just put down your phone. It's what you do when you put down your phone. It's relearning the skill.
Yeah, I lost you for a moment. Yeah, it's relearning the skills. That's where you stopped.
Yeah. So what was I saying when you lost me? I can repeat that so you can edit it back
Yes.
in.
Matters is what you do when you put down the phone.
Okay.
When you go,
Yeah. So that's why the solution to this disconnection is not just putting down your phone. It's what you do after you put down your phone. You know how to do. And so we need to relearn the skills to see, hear, value, and show the people around us that they're needed. And what's interesting is that when we do that for other people, we are actually reinforced that we matter. Our words matter. Our behaviors matter.
yes, yeah, I guess what I'm hearing is we stop using those skills, and then maybe nobody explained to us why they were important. And then we had all this technology and we just never reintroduced it because nobody told us they were important. As hearing each other, listening to each other, affirming each other, showing each other that we matter, that we are significant and needed. Yeah, then I never really
And
thought, yeah.
yeah, and I would add that there's also a gap between what we want to do and what we actually do.
Yes.
For example, think about someone in your life that you're grateful for right now. Everybody listening. When's the last time you told them explicitly, I'm grateful for you? Like oftentimes there's a gap between our intention and what we feel about people and what we actually do. And that's another bias. It's called our underestimation bias. We actually underestimate the impact of very small words, very small acts that show others they're seen, heard, and valued by us.
In fact, today or in the morning, because of our interview and being exposed to your work, I left a message to both of my parents telling them why they're important. Because sometimes I feel they don't actually know that, or might feel like they're not important anymore because you can support yourself, you can take care of yourself. Like, what's the meaning of them? Yes. And they were surprised.
Yeah. So one of the things people say to me is that they say, Zach, this is common sense. Why do you have a job?
Yeah.
And the problem is that common sense isn't common practice. Sorry, you just froze.
Yeah, I don't know what's
Okay.
happening, but yeah, what
I don't know what's happening. Yeah, it says like the little thing next to your thing is going red for some reason, the Wi-Fi thing. I don't know.
Yes.
I'll restate that. Where did I stop?
You step on why, Zach, why do you have a job?
Yeah. So people often ask me, like, Zach, why do you have a job? Isn't this just common sense? And I always say to them, what's common sense isn't always common practice.
Yeah.
And that's clear in the data. Think of someone that you rely on in your life. Think about the last time you told them, hey, I rely on you. I need you. You are indispensable to my life. Explicitly told them. One of my favorite ways to counteract this is what I call scheduling your good intentions. When I'm out walking my dog, I'm the kindest person in the world. I think about all the people I should thank, all the letters I should write, the calls I should make. And then I got back to my desk and I have a big to-do list. So when you have that intention, that thought to check in on somebody, to thank somebody, to remind somebody that they matter to you, put it on your to-do list, put it on your calendar, because we need to start making these things common practice.
Yeah. And what are the ways to do that, right? Maybe let's also jump into the model that you develop and noticing, affirming, and needing, right? And what kind of practices, what are those things and what kind of practices people can start putting on their calendar to make them not just intention, but a practice?
Yeah. So when we asked hundreds of people when they feel that they matter to others, what are those people doing? There are three major experiences. One is they feel noticed. So feeling noticed is feeling seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very big difference, though, in knowing somebody and noticing them. And I think it's important to distinguish. You can know your best friend, but not notice that they're struggling or suffering. You can know your team members, but not notice that one of them is feeling left out of discussions. So noticing is a deliberate act and practice of paying attention to the details, ebbs, and flows of people's lives, and then offering an action to show them that you see and hear them. And we are in such a hurry and our attention is in such short supply that we need tools to do this. One of my favorite examples came from a supervisor in a distribution center. And this distribution center had several teams that scored really low on employee engagement surveys, except for one team. It was an outlier. And so I went to that team and I said, what is going on here? What are you all doing? And all the team members said, oh, it's our supervisor. She just gets us. We'd do anything for her. And so I asked her, I said, what do you do here? And she said, it's really simple, Zach. She pulls out this notebook. She said, every Friday I write down the names of my team members. And then I write down one thing I noticed about them. They're struggling with a project. They're nervous about a meeting. If their child was starting a new sport. And I write it down. And then on Monday, I look at that notebook. And I schedule a 3-minute check-in with each of them just to ask about what I wrote down. And I say, hey, I remembered last week that you were nervous about that meeting. How did that go? And she looked at me and she said, there is magic in being remembered. But just as an example for that first noticing practice, what I love about that is that she had a tool, right? She didn't just leave it up to chance. Like she had a tool. It was a deliberate practice. Other practices in that noticing area are asking better questions instead of how are you or how's everybody doing today? Good. Asking questions that actually go beyond those greetings and get you data to see people. What is your attention today? What's been most meaningful to you today? What have you been working on today that's most exciting for you? What are you struggling with? How can I help? Those are like two practices that you can take immediately and start doing. Noticing people's details, remembering them, having a process and checking in on them. One of the things I do on my one-on-ones with my team is I write down, don't forget to ask about. Right at the top. Again, it's all about turning what's common sense into common practice. So noticing practice is the foundation of mattering.
Yes, because before you can affirm, because you can let people know how they are indispensable in your life, you gotta notice that.
Yeah, and what happens when you start noticing people is they start feeling valued, which, again, mattering is the experience of feeling significant to those around you that come from feeling valued and then adding value. And once people know that they're valued, they develop the confidence, the self-worth, and self-belief in their capability necessary to add value. And the adding value piece is making sure they're affirmed. They know how they and their uniqueness makes a unique difference, and then they know how they're needed, how they're relied on. But I think it's really important for listeners, if you're wanting to cultivate mattering around you, that the dominant approach to how we approach one another, especially in organizations, has been that people should be valued once they add value. But the opposite is actually true psychologically. People need to feel valued first in order to add value. So that's why that noticing practice comes first.
Yes, and it feels counterintuitive, but that's exactly right. It's also goes back to this idea that when you feel that others expect more of you, like you have more potential, ability to contribute more, you actually are so much more likely to try and to meet those expectations versus when somebody or a lot of people think that you're not going to sum up to anything, then the person is not even motivated to do more or sometimes anything.
Yeah, and I see this mistake being made with leaders who have quote unquote difficult employees. So if you have an underperforming employee and you come to see them and label them as an underperforming employee, the moment you label someone is the moment you cease seeking to understand them. And we have all these labels in our societies: low performers, high performers, disengaged people, highly engaged people, high potential people, low potential people, right? But what people are missing is exactly what you say. How you see somebody affects how you treat them. How you treat them affects how they behave toward you. How they behave toward you reinforces how you see them. So if you see someone as a difficult person, you will treat them as an issue to be dealt with. They will feel like an issue to be dealt with. They will act like an issue to be dealt with. And then you see them as an issue to be dealt with. Instead, interrupt that. Stop labeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I often say, when I see someone who's difficult or underperforming, I say to myself, this is a human being who's behaving in ways that I perceive as difficult.
Yeah, it's this,
That is much
work in
different.
progress.
This is a human being who's performing in ways that I perceive as underperformance. And when we separate these labels, we can actually start to seek understanding. And when we seek understanding, we start to see people. We start to hear people. We start to understand people. And when people feel understood, they develop more self-confidence. They develop a greater sense of self-worth, which are the very things we need them to have in order to improve their performance in the first place.
Yes.
But so many leaders try to get people to improve their performance by depleting the very self-beliefs they need to improve their performance.
Yes. And also, I feel like it's not just about performance, but also in day-to-day interactions, we so often see a behavior and we make an assumption and put a label on a person. This person was rude to me. This is this is someone who's rude. I probably don't want to be friends with them, or they just, I don't know, this bad person, like overall, right? Just from one instance. And very often we don't think like what this person is going through in their day. Like, what's the interaction
Absolutely.
been before? Maybe that's been the worst week or day in, I don't know, the year. Like, you just never know. And plus, we all know, like, we have our moments. We can be in the rush or something got into us, and we speak in a way that that can be perceived rude. But what I guess I'm getting is the people is not one act. Or also, if it's taken out of the context of, you can put different labels on that. And also, every person, I guess what I'm also very passionate about is a potential, meaning they can grow, they can change, they can develop. They're not just like this static state that they're stuck in for the rest of their life from the moment where you encountered them.
Exactly, because if we treat people, and a German philosopher said this, as we treat people as they can be, they become who they truly are.
Yeah, that is so powerful.
So think about, we often see people as what they're not yet. And so we treat them as what they're not yet, and they become what they're not. Instead, do you treat people on who you think they can become? How would that change if that difficult employee, that underperformer, quote unquote, if you treated them as if they were who they could be?
Yeah.
It's a radically different way of seeing somebody. And then that gets into that second area of that model, right? Noticed and then affirmed. You start affirming them that, hey, you have unique gifts that make a unique difference. And that's really what affirmation is. It's showing someone how their uniqueness makes a unique difference, that, hey, you have what it takes to make an impact. You make a unique difference. And when we feel affirmed, when we feel that we matter, we tend to act like we matter.
Yeah.
And we see ourselves in that.
What I also found to be very powerful in your book, and I think it's the first book where I saw a lot more clarity around things like strengths, purpose, perspectives, and wisdom. right? Because I also believe like a lot of people struggle to even understand their own strengths before working on them or developing them. And so I really love the clarity there in how you incorporated that in the book and around affirmation and all the other practices that the person needs to first develop this awareness. And then leaders need to also develop ways of how to see this strengths, for example, in a person before being able to affirm them.
Yeah, I often say that it's very hard to read the label when you're inside the jar.
Yeah.
So like that it is very hard to be able to name our gifts when we are not the recipient of them.
Yeah.
Other people around us are the recipient of our gifts. We are the recipient of other people's gifts. So part of our duty as human beings is to show them what we see because they likely don't see it themselves. And I like using the word gifts. And I was writing that section of the book and I was reading a lot about strengths. But there was something that was missing for me about what I noticed that people gave me every day. They didn't just give me what they're good at and what they love to do, which is a strength. They also made a unique impact, right? They served a unique
Yeah.
purpose. They also have a unique perspective that only they have. They also have wisdom that only they have. Wisdom is what we've learned in our life. Everybody in the world has something that only they can teach you. Think about that. Think about that way of seeing others, right? That everybody around me has something that they can teach me that only they can teach me.
Yes.
And that's their wisdom.
And again, I just love also how you put simple definitions into like this. So sometimes feel that things that feel very abstract and hard to define. Like, for example, strengths, something you love to do and something that you're good at, right? So it makes it easier to figure out when somebody is not sure, like, what are my strengths? And obviously, there are also these assessments that you mentioned in the book. Or, for example, purpose, it's your strengths plus the impact that you want to make.
Yeah. You make.
Exactly. And it makes it so much easier than, okay, my purpose, it doesn't have to be something, I don't know, out of this world, like big or, I don't know, audacious. And I feel like once you figure that out, it's so much easier to then just bring your best talents or gift to the table mission or your organization, and then also start seeing that in other people as well.
Yeah, I think that we've overcomplicated a lot of these things.
Yeah. After reading your book, I felt like this is simpler.
Yeah, because if we can't name something, we can't do anything about it. We can't change it. We can't invest in it. And I think we've overcomplicated things. You mentioned purpose. I think that's a great insight because a lot of people like say, like, how do I find my purpose? As if it's like out there in some mystical land waiting for you to like discover it. But purpose is really where your strengths make a difference. If you're living and breathing today, you have strengths. If you're living and breathing today, you will impact someone else at some point in some conversation. So you already have purpose. Your task is not to go find your purpose. It's to see your purpose.
Yes. And again, that was such a great, insightful piece of the book that I really love. And yeah, I guess for this section, affirming, what are some practices that you could recommend to leaders or individuals to affirm other people, and maybe also affirm themselves more often and better?
Yeah, it's very easy for someone to like take a compliment and say, oh, no, that's not true. That's not me. It's very hard for someone to be affirmed, truly affirmed and not believe it. Because when you affirm somebody, you are giving them the indisputable evidence of their significance. Because affirmation is very different than appreciation or recognition. Appreciation is just showing general gratitude for who someone is. Recognition is showing general gratitude for what someone does, but affirmation is showing them the specific evidence of their unique significance. One example I can share is I worked with a manager of facilities maintenance people at the National Park Service. This is in the US, there's national parks and there's a big staff of people that manage all the facilities in these very difficult environments. And he had a practice that every Friday, he would send them photos of projects his team worked on, and he would send photos of visitors using those projects, walking across a bridge, using a new building that was open, using a doorway that was fixed. And he would just send them an email and said, hey, look what you did. Thank you. And I love that practice because look what you did. Nobody can sit back and be like, oh, he doesn't mean it. I mean, it's right there. Like,
Yeah.
it's right there. So affirmation is when you give someone the indisputable evidence of their significance. So what he did was he used photos to show them. We can also tell and collect real stories of people's significance in our lives. If somebody did something for you and it made a difference for you, don't just say, hey, thank you. Say, hey, because you helped me out today, it allowed me to do this. Let me show you. I call that meaningful gratitude. When you say thank you to someone, don't just tell them thank you or good job. Show them the difference they make and exactly how they made that difference. Name their gifts. Another way to affirm people is that when you are talking about their tasks or what they do, always bring it back to why the task matters to someone else and what it's necessary for. Because again, it is very easy for nothing to matter to someone who doesn't first believe that they and what they're doing matters.
Yeah. I also
But
love this
oftentimes,
example.
yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I
No, go.
also have this example of, I don't know if it's completely related, cognitive constructing, but that mindset at work when somebody can give themselves this affirmation practice. So I do this work so that, I don't know, the other person can do their job and our organization can help our clients do that, right? So you can bring this affirmation practice to yourself as well and feel that you do matter when, for example, not every day or not every time that you need it, somebody else affirms you, but you can give it to yourself having this mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. You can make it, you can get yourself ready to experience mattering. And what I mean by that is that this whole, one of the last chapters of the book is how you can apply that noticing, affirming, and needing model to yourself.
Yeah.
Noticing yourself, noticing your emotions, noticing how you've impacted someone else that day, noticing your unique gifts, noticing your strengths, affirming yourself by reminding yourself, who did you help today?
Yeah. Like this practice that I think you started asking your son, who did you help and who helped you in completely
Yeah,
changing
who
the
did you help
conversation.
today?
Yeah.
If you end your day subtly thinking to yourself, what did I get done today? You will very quickly start to experience that you don't matter because achievements come and go, right?
Yeah.
But your presence and the ability to contribute is available every day. So you contribute to others every day in very small ways that are probably more impactful when it comes to your legacy and who you are than your to-do list. But we have to start seeing those things. Who did I help today? Who needed me today? This is a powerful one, especially I'm a parent of two young boys, right? And there's a lot going on. And it can feel like you're just doing the regular task, driving people everywhere. And then you realize, you start to think to yourself, oh my gosh, like I'm creating like a human being's core memory of carpooling with their friends to practice.
Yeah. I still
You have to
remember.
remember that though. It's not like what's purposeful isn't always pleasurable.
Yeah.
Contributing is rarely convenient.
Yes. You know that you have this concept of, I think it also last chapter, of overestimating your impact, right? Instead of thinking like, oh, it doesn't really matter, think how big of an impact you're actually making on the world around you, like through those small interactions, whether that's your family or, I don't know, barista at your favorite coffee shops. And how would you behave if you knew it all mattered and could change someone's life?
Yes, absolutely. There's several experimental studies that show that when, for example, researchers had people write little notes, little thank you notes to people, and then they rated the person writing the thank you note on how impactful they thought it would be. And then they asked the receiver how impactful it was. And almost every time the person who wrote the note underestimated the impact on the receiver. Other studies have been done that show like we underestimate how interested a stranger will be in having a conversation with us. So we don't talk to them, right? So we have this underestimation bias where we underestimate our impact. But I'm here to tell you that the evidence shows, and you have an evidence-based pass to overestimate your impact. Because the little things that we do, and again, we've become worse at doing these little things, which has led us to where we are today as a society where we're disconnected, we're divided, and people feel insignificant. Overestimate these little things. Schedule your good intentions. Put it on your to-do list and do it. Don't overthink it.
Yeah. Of affirmations I think I want to transition now to needing and this practice of helping others to feel and understand that they're needed, and like why this is important, and how people can also do it to complete this set of practices for noticing, affirming, and needing. Also, I think me personally, also, I wanted to understand like why is that important and how is it different from affirming someone?
Yeah. So affirming is that you know that your unique gifts make a unique difference. Being shown that you're needed means that those gifts and that difference you make are indispensable. We couldn't do it without you. When people report experiencing mattering, one of the most critical ingredients that they report experiencing is feeling relied on by others. When we ask people, hey, when is a time in your life when you most felt that you mattered? People frequently say, oh, when I became a caretaker, or when I had to take care of a friend, or when I became a parent, or when I had to help somebody who was in trouble, or when I had to solve a problem or an emergency at work. And all of those things are a little bit different than affirmation because they point to feeling relied on. Human beings are at their best when they're relied on, because our whole species wouldn't even be here right now if we weren't interdependent. So feeling needed is like an essential quality of what it means to be human. To know that your presence and your absence mean something to just one other person, I think is what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And so feeling needed, and when we feel like we are needed, we act like it. So one of my favorite experiments that shows this, and I talk about this in the book, is in 1913, a French agricultural engineer had some students pull on a rope as hard as they could, and he attached it to a dynamometer that measures force, like how hard they're pulling on the rope. And then he had them do it as individuals. So same amount of students, he had them do it as groups, and then he had to do them as individuals. And conventional wisdom would say the groups exerted the most total force. But every time when he added up the force readings, it was the individuals. And why is that? Because the individuals knew that their effort was indispensable. No one else was going to pull on the rope for them. So they exerted more total force. So when people feel replaceable at work, on a team, in a relationship, they will act replaceable. They will not show up. They will not commit. But when people feel irreplaceable, when they authentically feel that they and their unique gifts make a unique difference, that they and their work are not disposable, not dispensable, they show up and they commit emotionally. And that's what it means to feel needed. One of the best ways you can do that is the people we interview report people around them saying 5 words to them regularly. If it wasn't for you. Hey, I just want to say, if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be possible.
Such a simple phrase.
It's very simple phrasing, but in our individualistic Western cultures, it's very hard for people to say that. When we do self-assessments on mattering, the needing section is the lowest in almost every group, especially in the Western world.
I think
in the Eastern
it's
countries,
the other way.
Asia, it's actually the other way around. That noticing individuals' uniqueness is lower. The needing piece is higher because that's part of the culture. But in the Western cultures, it's very hard for people to say, hey, I rely on you.
Because
especially here in the
also, maybe it's a sign of weakness. Like can be interpreted as I need you, or I need someone to do my thing or to help me with that. I think that might have to do with that.
People don't thrive when they're just out on their own.
Yeah.
But it's odd how a lot of our self-help messaging and a lot of the messaging to people have said, no one's coming to save you. You have to figure it out yourself. Get tough. All of that
Mm.
messaging is actually counter to what we know about human psychology and flourishing. Do you know the number
Yeah.
one ingredient of a flourishing life in almost every study? The number one ingredient of
Relationships?
happiness and flourishing is relationships.
Yeah. So I think I read it in some longevity studies actually.
Yes, the number one. But go on your Instagram feed. Go to the bestseller list for nonfiction right now.
Yeah.
Look at how many titles are on that list or viral things on Instagram about how to help yourself. And then notice how many things are on there about how to help others.
Yeah, just even see
And
that.
you will see the reason why we're so lonely, disconnected, and disengaged.
Yeah. I'm like on board with everything I read in your book. I think it's going to be a bestseller, to be honest. Like it's so much needed for
Oh, that's
our
nice. I hope
times.
so. I hope people, and not that it's a bestseller, I just hope people like think about it and start incorporating it and
I
relearn some of these things, name some of these things. That's why I wrote it, to name these things.
Exactly. That's how I felt like a lot of things that we would think about or somehow try to figure out, like they didn't have good enough definitions. It's like with this strengths and purposes until you can define something in a simple way and then give people a way to practice it, to do it with other people, to somehow quantify it. Until we do that, it's very hard to, make it a common practice, as you said. And I think, of next question, I want to go into scaling these practices because I feel like a lot of leaders or even people might think, okay, I will know that, but how do we spread it? How do we make sure that more people do that? And it's not just like one thing that I have with my, I don't know, friends or a couple of coworkers. Like, what are some ways of scaling that throughout the organization and then the whole world? What
Wow.
have you found?
That's a big question, right? I think that we have to first set the motivation to do it.
Mhm.
One of my favorite psychologists, his name is BJ Fogg. He's
Too
at
far, yeah.
Stanford. Many people have heard of him. He writes books on habits, which are phenomenal. But any human behavior has three components. We have to be motivated to do it. We have to be energized to do it. We have to want to do it because it matters
Yeah.
to us and we know it matters to others. The second is we need skills to do it. We need to know how to do it. And the third is our environment has to remind us to do it. So in the simplest terms, if we want to create mattering for other people, we have to want to do it. We have to return to this question and really think about when you most believe that you matter as a human being, what is happening and what does that mean to you? Then you will very quickly reveal that those moments have probably constructed your view of yourself and your life with others. Mattering is so fundamental. So being motivated to do it for the right reasons too. We can't, as leaders, we can't just do it to get people to perform more, or produce more. Anytime you see someone as a means to your end, they cease becoming a person to you.
Yeah.
Become just a resource. And again, if someone feels like a resource, they'll act like it. They'll get up and leave when they don't feel valued. So that's the first, is the motivation. The second is you have to learn the right skills. And that's why a lot of people the critique of my book is, this is common sense. Why do you need a whole book on it? And the reason why I wrote the book is because, again, it's not common practice and we haven't actually named and categorized these essential human skills to do this for one another. And if we can't name something, we can't measure them. We can't keep doing them. We can't develop them. And that leads me to the next part, developing those right skills, but measuring those right skills. So being in an environment where we're actually doing an evaluation. I have leaders do a self-evaluation every 2 weeks on the frequency at which they're noticing people, affirming people, showing them how they're needed. And then they talk about it with one another. Because what we talk about is who we become. I'm very concerned that this topic of mattering is enlightening for people.
You were concerned.
I'm concerned about it because it is so fundamental.
Yeah.
Like literally as a human being, as a human being, the first thing that you did when you were born is you didn't search for food. You searched for someone who'd care for you. You searched to matter to somebody. It's our most primal human instinct. And that instinct is not being met on a grand scale, right? And we call these things touchy-feely or soft. I mean, showing someone how they matter is about as touchy-feely as feeding someone in front of you who's hungry. And so we need to start approaching this with the same rigor as we approach anything else.
Yes, and a small sentiment here. I think we actually, human beings, we somehow really good at not noticing the most important fundamental stuff because maybe it feels so much a part of who we are that we don't notice. It's when you have your gift, you don't notice it. It's like the same. I come from a background also wealth, wellness, nutrition, and for me, it's like, how do you not understand that what you put on your plate going to be directly correlated with the health?
That's how I feel. That's how I feel with relationships. That's how I feel with leaders. Like, how do you not understand that someone will not add value until they feel valued? But that's exactly, it's a great parallel to nutrition, actually.
Yes, because again, like, so for me, it's like, that just common sense, right? But the same thing with here, like mattering and affirm the sense of significance of being needed and bringing value into the world. Like, it's so fundamental to being human. But I think maybe because it is so fundamental, we just like blind.
I love this. This is like social nutrition.
Exactly.
Really, it really is social nutrition because what we invest, what we put into other people,
yes,
directly correlates to what they offer us.
Yes. And again, back to this idea, I actually had another conversation today. And I said that I look at a human being like kind of like a seed, and you put it in the soil, and depending on the soil and the nourishment, the seed gonna grow into this beautiful, magnificent plant, or into like almost nothing. And I feel like for a human being, social interactions is that the most important nourishment that you can get. And
I love that. You're right. And this is important for listeners. The seed doesn't grow because you hope it will grow.
Yeah.
It doesn't grow because you yell at it to grow. It doesn't grow because you complain about it. It doesn't grow because you think about it. It grows because you take action to nourish it. And that's it. That's what this is all about. Is taking action to fill the most fundamental human need that people have, which is to feel significant.
Yeah. So then people can flourish and release into the world their magnificent gifts that we all are given.
And we need people's gifts more than ever. We have increasingly complex problems that are going to require unique strengths, purpose, perspective, and wisdom. And what I worry about is in a world where more and more people are feeling that they don't matter, that we're going to miss out on the very resources we need to solve these problems.
Yes. And I share this sentiment, this thought. And since I was a kid, I felt like every single person is a superhero, but they need certain like unlockers or certain tools to get to their gifts so they could release their superpowers. And so together we could create a better world and live the most fulfilling lives doing that. Fiona, I read in your book that you have similar purpose to help more human geniuses to express their genius and to give the gifts that they were given to the world.
I see my purpose just as a parent, as an educator, as a researcher, as just a human, is to help people to realize their own significance. I don't think my task is to tell people that they're significant or tell people that they matter or motivate people or inspire people. I see my task as helping people reveal to themselves, help people see themselves as significant.
Yes.
Which is and once you do, that's the only motivation you'll need. Once a human being truly believes that they and what they do matters. They won't need any more motivation.
No, I agree with you. And yeah,
He is truly believes. And that
yes,
comes from
truly
environment.
believes. Environment, yes. And yeah, environment is such a huge thing. Definitely. I just told my dad today, as I told you, I called my parents and I said to my dad, I know that it might feel like you're not necessarily needed in my life, in the life of my sister. We have our own things. I'm here today doing the things that I do because when I was a kid, you believed in my dreams. You always went with me on the craziest adventures to help me, I don't know, to get to an education, etc. Because you believed in the vision I had for myself. Until this day, you still do that, right? Always encouraging, trying out things. And that's the reason why I am where I am, right? And so that really matters. But, and I think if everyone has someone like that in their lives, we can create such kind of magnificent things that we don't know about and maybe not even dreaming about. But thank you so much again, Zach, for writing this book and for doing your best to spread this beautiful message to help more people feel more significant. So again, they could create the beauty in the world, they give away the gifts and solve the biggest problems. So that's, I think, so needed. Is there anything that you'd like to add at the end of this conversation? Maybe leave our listeners with tool or message or some practice. And then also let our listeners know where they can learn about your work and to follow you. And I know.
Yeah, my message is don't overthink it. Your next great act will happen in your next interaction.
Yes. What
So
was
your
the
next
phrase about
great act.
leaders? Great leaders optimize interactions.
Yes, great leaders. That leadership is relationships. And when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about anybody who influences anybody. Everybody listening right now influences someone. And so you're a leader by default. Your next great leadership act is your next interaction. And everybody's looking for the next program, platform, or next big thing, but it really starts in your next interaction. In your next interaction, can you notice something unique about somebody? Can you name a strength they have? Can you remind them that you believe in them? Can you show them that they're needed in that conversation? And you can. It's all accessible. And I guess a way to, if you want to read more, you can go to my website, zachmercurio.com or powerofmattering.com and learn more about what you can do. There's some free resources there as well on how to do some of this and how to reflect on it for yourself. There's a free assessment that we talked about in this podcast right there. So join in and join this movement, commit to doing it.
Yeah, commit to mattering, helping others feel like they are significant and helping yourself to feel the same. And I think like this, we can change the world one interaction at a time. Thank you. Thank you, Zach, again, for your work and being a part of this conversation. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.